Yes, welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy, once again hosting a top-notch business communication professional so that you and I can learn tips and strategies that will boost our business. Today, it is a wonderful privilege to welcome from Madison, Wisconsin, Darcy Luoma. She's the author of a book, Thoughtfully Fit, released in June of 2021. Darcy is a master certified coach and an inspiring speaker. She has worked as director for a senator, trusted senior advisor for a governor, and on the national advance team for 2 presidential campaigns. As the CEO of Darcy Luoma Coaching and Consulting, she's worked in 48 industries with more than 500 organizations to create high-performing people and teams. The media has named Darcy the region's favorite executive coach 4 times. Darcy balances running her thriving business with raising her 2 energetic teenage daughters. And hey, I've been there, done that. That does take some energy and some balancing of life. And also, Darcy engages actively in adventure travel and competing in triathlons. I guess you could say never a dull moment. Darcy, welcome to the Biz Communication Show.
Thank you so much, Bill. It's truly an honor to be with you.
Well, it's a great privilege to be with you. I'm looking forward any day to your book arriving in the mail, and I'll get a chance to benefit from that, as I'm sure so many will. Darcy, you've had at least several hundred speaking engagements, and you and I both over a couple of decades have faced audiences that we might call unique, but you and I have one item in common there, and that is that we have taught or worked with people who were incarcerated. In my case, and then I'll get to yours, in my case, I was a speech communication faculty member at the University of Georgia. The department head circulated a memo saying that that summer, one person from our department would teach at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, teach the basic speech communication course. Darcy, that memo did not rest on my desk. I took it and ran immediately to the office and said, I'm your guy. So for 6 weeks, 2.5 hours per night, twice a week, I taught a group of 31 inmates at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. Now, you have faced the similar group at the Denver Women's Correctional Facility. Tell us, please, and we all know, and I teach this and you teach this when you're coaching, that when you're talking to an audience, you have to do audience adaptation. I taught that in the basic speech course at Georgia, and I've been teaching it ever since. Tell me, how did you adapt to this audience, which is so different from most audiences that you or I or anybody would ever face?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And what an incredible story that you jumped at that offer, because I'm sure there are many others who jumped away from it and were intimidated by that. And I have found in working with these women over the last couple of years that, yes, while they are a unique audience from any other audience, they are people who want to learn and grow and self-improve and have a meaningful life just like everybody else. And so in connecting with them, I'm one of the things that I leaned heavily into is the fact that my husband, well, it was actually just 6 years ago. Yesterday was the anniversary, and today would have been my wedding anniversary, my 16th wedding anniversary. He was arrested completely. I was blindsided. There was a SWAT team and 40 or 50 officers and guns, and they took him away. And I found out later he was arrested for sexual assault of a minor he had met online. And he was a full-time stay-at-home dad to our 2 young daughters. When he was arrested that day, St. Patrick's Day, he never came home. He was ultimately sentenced to 10 years in prison. And so my ability to relate, I mean, this was a world I never would have thought. I would not have been the one to jump at that email if I had gotten it prior to my own experience. I would have thought, what would I have to say? And what do we have in common?
And how could I
I'll
do
tell
that?
you.
Yes, right.
Yeah. I mean, wow, these women are hungry for growth and development. And my sharing my story, and also that I've forgiven my ex-husband. And that journey really created a special bond in that way, unlike any other audience.
When I became familiar with your story and with your profession a few weeks ago, I started then, and I maintained great admiration for your frankness in telling your story. And as all of us know, when something so heartbreaking and so disruptive and so unexpected happens to us, we really have choices as to how we're going to react. At that instant, we don't think we have choices. But I don't know how much you've read of Og Mandino, but I read probably all of Og Mandino's books. And he said, one of the greatest gifts in life that God has given us is the ability to choose. And it's also our most valuable, one of our most valuable gifts from God in our life, that we can choose how we react. And in your case, you could have been bitter, you could have become isolated, you could have very easily kept this quiet in your own community, but instead you used it and are still using it as a springboard to help other people who have vast obstacles come into their life. And my admiration for you is great on that. Let me just say very quickly, when I worked at that summer at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, I, like you, was, I'm sure, the first time you go in there, it is frightening. And I can still hear the first time that those steel doors slid through, slid shut, and there was that echo down the hall. And here's an interesting point. I walked over to a guard and I said, I'm here to teach a class for the University of Georgia. Where are they? He said, third floor. I said, well, how do I get there? And I thought he would say, well, I will certainly guide you up there. And he said, I don't care. Take the elevator, take the stairs. And so I walked in there without an escort. Now, one of the keys to me when you're facing an audience, which is certainly out of the ordinary from any audience you ever face, as you and I have done, I believe, and I'd like your comment on this, I believe this is the time to be what so many people are advocating now. This is the time to be your authentic self. I didn't go in there, I am a professor. I am a university instructor. I have never broken the law, none of that. I went in there and tried to relate immediately as an individual. And I imagine that was your approach, right?
It was. And, it's interesting because for my journey to be able to share my story, whether at the prison or publicly and elsewhere, did not come immediately. And so while I appreciate and I'm so grateful for your kind comments, I did hide for a long time. And I was in this place of not being authentic and trying to make sure that nobody knew. And
that's understandable. That's very understandable.
Yeah. And so it took me a lot of therapy and a lot of work to be able to get to the place where I got, which is what you're beautifully highlighting, of just, this is my story. This is me. This is authentic. And boy, I was scared to put it out there publicly. I was scared I'd lose my business. I'm scared I'd lose my clients. And yet the exact opposite happened when I started to lean into the truth. that veneer, that wall, whatever it was that I didn't even know I had up, it came down.
Yes, and I think the point is, and I mentioned the word vulnerability, and also in the excuse me, I mentioned authenticity, and also in the realm of communication, we talk about the value of vulnerability, because we aren't perfect, because life is not always going to go well for us or for anybody around us or for strangers we meet, and to pretend that it does, and if you just smile and approach the day well, there's not going to be any ill circumstances. So in your case, to me, the fact that you were authentic about it, you were open about it, you said, I'm very vulnerable, this is what happens to me. But the positive side of it is that you found a way to bounce back. And I know with what I've read about you and what I've heard, that some people are saying, you what? You forgave your husband for this? Talk about that for a minute.
Yes, that's been an interesting part of my journey, that when he was arrested, it wasn't even on my radar screen. And yet, as time has gone on, and I've worked with not only my own therapist, but also child psychologists and therapists for my daughters, what I've learned is the research shows that if your children are not at risk and not in danger, which thankfully mine were not, it is always better for kids to have a relationship with their incarcerated parent. That was enough for me, for me to say, I want Josie and Jaden. I mean, they were devastated when their dad was taken away with no notice. They had never gone to bed a night without him tucking them in and making breakfast in the morning. And he did the haircuts, the dentist appointments, the gym, he did everything. So I knew that my life mission became, how do I help them to grow up and have a meaningful life where this doesn't make them bitter and angry. And so I was doing the best I could to lean into the advice, the research of those who have gone before. And so I decided, if they're going to have a relationship with their dad, I need to have a relationship with him, and I need to access forgiveness. And for me to stay angry and bitter and resentful would not have supported them getting in a relationship with him, or even me getting to this place of peace with where things are. So that was an important part for me that I didn't know at the beginning of the journey. I didn't even think it was accessible or possible. And here I am on the other side. And I just, and I also will just say, Bill, for people who are listening, going like, what? People who have maybe not forgiven someone in their life for something that has been much less betrayal or much, right, not as intense, like, that's okay. There's no judgment. You are where you are in your journey. But I can unequivocally say that I am in a better place because of my work to find forgiveness.
So well said. There's a thought I came up with a couple of years ago, looking back over my life and some of the unpleasant things that had happened to me, and some people I would blame for that. And I came up with a phrase, Darcy, I think the heaviest thing you can carry in life is a grudge. I think, what could be heavier in your life to carry than a grudge? 100-pound
I just got
sack?
goosebumps when you said that.
Because it's and one thing I discovered also, I remember one night I was very disturbed by when I was in the management workforce. I was very disturbed about an email someone had sent me. It was very critical. And I just wasn't sleeping at all. And all of a sudden something struck me, and that is, guess what? That person's sleeping pretty well right now.
Oh.
And you're the only one staying awake, working, thinking about this. So it's not simple, but putting grudges aside is when we free ourselves to have a much fuller life, which you teach. Darcy, we have time for an important question about your profession. You're not only known as an inspiring an informative and motivational speaker, but you're also a widely respected and in demand coach. So my question, which I'm sure some of our viewers on YouTube would want an answer to, and some of our listeners on the podcast, why do we need coaches? I mean, why can't I just figure this out on myself? Isn't it kind of demeaning to say I need to hire a coach? What's your answer to that?
Yeah, great question. And I think a lot of people are curious about that. And the answer is you don't need a coach. You can do it on your own. Having said that, you're not going to go as far on your own, and it's going to take a lot longer. So we can't get to that peak performance. We can't see our own blind spots. So just like Michael Phelps, if he had no coaches in his life, he's going to be a pretty darn good swimmer. The way he's built, his discipline, his drive, his focus, he's going to be a good swimmer. But he would not be the most decorated Olympian of all time if he had not had invested in coaches. And I think the same thing is true for our lives, whether it's a life coach, an executive coach, a business leadership coach, whatever it might be. It's one of the reasons I almost always have a coach. And my, colleagues and friends will say, well, why you are a coach? Why do you have a coach? I have my blind spots as well. And dentists need dentists, right? I mean, I just believe in it that my coaches help me to see things that I can't see on my own, to try on different perspectives, to lean into the discomfort and give support and cheerleading and accountability for me to do the things that I know are going to make my life better, but might be hard. And without a coach, might be easier just to kind of sit back and take the easy route.
Well, a coach, for one thing, brings accountability into the picture, because we can set our goals, we can set our deadlines, but we can also let them pass and say, well, I just didn't quite get that done then. And we may not be as strict a judge on ourselves as somebody else would be, even though when I use the word judge, that's probably not the right word. Supporter would be a better word, but because that's what a coach is. And when people ask, well, why do you need a coach? My question would be, well, if you're a football fan, what happens when a team is losing and has season after season of losses? What do? They get a new coach. And who are the people who bring their teams to the national championships? It's the championship coaches, because they can help people not only in motivation or strategy but to bring out the best of who they can be. And isn't that the role of a coach, to bring out the best of who their clients can be, Darcy?
Yes. It is. And to build on that, Bill, not only to bring out the best they can, also to recognize where are you at your worst and what are the obstacles that are getting in the way of you being able to overcome those, whether it's that inner trash talk, whether it is external obstacles, not having the courage, whatever it might be, that's really getting in the way of you. So it's not just the cheerleading, the support, it's also the strategy and the when you say accountability, bite-sized pieces. At the end of every coaching session, I ask my clients, based on the new awareness you're having, what are you going to do between now and our next session? Not what are you going to do with your life and over the next year, because that's too big, it's too overwhelming. It's just in the next 2 weeks, what step are you going to take? And then when they come back in 2 weeks and they celebrate that, I can't tell you how many times I have had clients say after 4 months, Darcy, this is like magic. I've been trying to do this for 4 years. How did you do this? And I say, I didn't do anything. You did it. You identified what you want, what the end result is, what success is. And then you started to tackle what's getting in the way and how can I move forward? What's the action step? Bite-sized pieces. And every time we've met, you have done your homework and here you are.
And look where it adds up. Yes.
Yeah.
It reminds me of one of my favorite sayings of Mark Twain, where someone said to him, "I'm a self-made man." And Mark Twain said, "Well, that relieves the Lord of a great responsibility." Darcy, this is my first opportunity to interview you. I certainly hope it's not the only one, because you are a treasure of information, motivation, and a marvelous life story that inspires me and so many others. So I hope that you will consider return engagements on the Biz Communication Show.
Oh, I would be so delighted and honored. Thank you for the graciousness, the curiosity, the connection, the warmth. I really would love to come back.
I know that, Pete, thank you for that. I'll look forward to it. Keep your calendar handy. Darcy, I know that many of our viewers on YouTube and our listeners on the podcast will want to get in touch with you. So please give us your contact information.
Yeah, my website is darcyluoma.com, and I've got all the different handles and social media and email and all of that on there. And then if anybody's curious to learn more about the book and the model, thoughtfullyfit.com is where you can go to learn more there.
And I encourage everyone to do that. Since Darcy has been gracious enough to give her contact information, I'll give mine. Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. So logically, my website is B-I-Z, bizcommunicationguy.com. I invite you to go there, check my services for corporations and leaders. Give me a call, and let's talk about how I can, as Darcy would put it, become your communication coach. Darcy, 20 seconds for a closing comment.
Oh, I want to just let people know, wherever you're at on your journey, that the fact you've hit the pause button to take time to invest in yourself, to listen to Bill, to gain some awareness, to me, that's the best we can do, is just continue to invest in ourselves. And it's an honor to share a little bit of my story with your viewers today. Thank you.
We're blessed for hearing that. Thank you again to Darcy Luoma for joining us today for an intriguing and fascinating conversation. And thank you to those who've been with us on YouTube and on the podcast. Be with us again next week on the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy.